Hey everybody, Brian Leslie Father here. Welcome back to Family Secrets. We're in course number 5, the secret to prioritizing your family relationships. We had unit 1 where we talked about putting God first in your life. We talked about the priority of your personal relationship. We talked about having time together with your spouse, in with God, time together in the Lord. And we also talked about make sure that you have a commitment to being part of God's family, which is the church. That's we'll probably pepper that in through this particular unit as well, because it's not like each priority is separated.
Right.
It's not like the old tray you got at the school with the little compartments. One's for the applesauce, this is for the pork chop, and this is for the green beans. No, it all mingles together. It touches. And sorry if you're not a casserole person, this is a casserole. But this is the way how that works. So this second unit is your spouse is second.
Yes.
What do you mean? She's first, he's first. No, your spouse is second. I've told people for years that Leslie's my number 2.
Yep.
And she's happy with being my number 2.
Right.
And people are like, I don't understand what you're saying. I said, because God is first. Go back to unit 1, check it out, listen again. God first. So and here's what this does. It frees her up to not have to be the person who makes me happy all the time.
That's right.
It frees her up to not to be the one that brings me joy all the time. Because if she gets off the wrong side of the bed, which means she kicked me out and rolled over me or something of that nature, but she gets off on the wrong side of the bed, proverbially, or she just has a bad day, or she's not feeling good. My happiness is not built into her emotion, her moods, her good feelings or bad feelings. It's not built into that. I like her happy. I like her in a good mood. But my joy, my happiness, my peace is not built into her having a great day. My joy, my peace, my sanity is built into my relationship with God. That's why God first, spouse second. Because now I can give her the space as my spouse just to be what she needs to be on a daily basis. I don't have to, I'm not demanding of her to be the one to bring me my happiness and my joy. And a lot of divorce happens because there's a false expectation of, you better take care of me, because we got married and you committed, and if it wasn't for you, I'd be a happy man. If it wasn't for you, I'd be a happy woman. That's a false expectation. My peace, my joy does not come from my wife. It comes from my God. Now, with that said, she's number 2. She's a top priority. She's my number 1 earthly priority, if I can put it that way. Go ahead.
I like that I'm number 2, and I like that he's number 2 to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that actually brings me more security to have the knowledge that we have God first. It's like it's a given. It took us maybe a year or 2 into our marriage to really get to where we were like, okay, we don't even have to say God's number 1. It's just, it's a given. God is number 1. We're number 2 to each other, but we like it that way because that means we are keeping everything in the right order, and it brings us stability and it brings us security. And like he said, peace to our relationship because we know where the priority is. We know where the lineup is, and we're good with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So she is my number 1 earthly priority, and that's super important. And so we're going to lean into that a little bit because we're talking about family priorities, family relationship priorities. So we're talking about you having a family. You may have 1 child, you may have 20. We don't know. It depends on. Never mind. Hey, but you may have multiple. You may have a single. So here's the thing. We've seen this over and over and over and over again. So the number 1 thing on the list on this one is do not idolize your children. And do not idolize your children's activities. And I'm going to say this. Ladies, you're worse at this than men. Typically. Not every time, but typically. Women, once you have a baby, it's like game over. My life is dedicated to this child. And that's a wrong order. Because when you got married, you became one with your husband. Yes, there's times, especially when the baby's young, when the child's young, that you have to give a lot of time and commitment to that child. And dads, we just got to deal with that and get over it. But there's that. But you have to remember that child's going to grow up and leave. And so you have to remember the priority of your relationship on earth is with your spouse. Men, same way.
The goal is to raise your children.
Yes.
And have them leave the home, but keep the spouse. That's the goal. You want to keep the spouse. If you don't work on your relationship, if you don't keep one another as priority, then you lose the marriage at the end, and that was the whole goal in the first place, to keep the marriage.
Right.
So you need to make sure that you have the priority right.
Yeah, you don't want to fall prey to what's known as empty nest syndrome. A lot of marriages fall apart after they raise their children, because when the children are out of the house, now the husband and wife look at each other and are like, who are you? I don't know. Who are you? You seem like someone I've met 30 years ago, but who are you?
They don't have anything in common
Not
anymore.
one thing. Because the only thing they held common was their children.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous place to be.
It is.
And so don't idolize your children or their activities. Enjoy them. Enjoy their activities and promote them. Help them. But don't idolize them to the point that you neglect the priority of your marriage.
Right.
Go ahead.
So keep their activities and your children, keep them in the right order.
Yeah.
So God first. So everything we do with our children, it's teaching them a priority in life.
Yes.
And so if we allow their activity to usurp going to church, then we've taught them that their activity is more important than God and his church.
Right.
That's the wrong thing to do. Right. So you always need to put it through that filter of what priority is this giving my children? If I say, well, you want me to stay home and just play games with you all day, and I say, okay, I'll do that, and I forfeit going out with my husband because he's asked me to go out with him and to be with him to do something important, then I put them before my husband, and that's out of order also, and I can't do that. So children, it's for their good. It's modeling to them how relationships need to be ordered and prioritized. The way you react, the way you act and react teaches them the order of life and the order of relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're doing in that is what the second point we have in this unit is you're letting or teaching your kids that your spouse is your top priority in the house. And it's important. My kids know that Leslie's number one. They know that she's the top priority that I have here on this earth. They're a priority, and they should be, and we'll address that. But she's my number one priority, and so it comes down between her or them. I'm choosing her over them, and not because I don't love them, because I do. But I'm modeling because I want them to model the same thing when they get older.
Yes.
When my job as a parent is not to become a friend to my children. I know that that's not popular in today's culture. It's not my job. My job as a parent is to raise my children to become functioning, God-loving, spouse-loving, child-loving adults. My job is not to raise a child. My job is to raise an adult. Yeah. And so my goal from day one, when we first, with our firstborn, right away, we started raising that child with the goal in mind that one day she was going to become an adult. And so we began to raise her. Now, I didn't treat her like an adult at 6 months.
No.
Okay? So don't hear what we're saying wrong. But I let her know, even when she's little, mom's first. She's really important. And it's so important that they get that. Loved my kids. I played with them. I wrestled with them. I took them. Took my daughters on dates. Went to movies, and games, and you name it. Everything that dads do with their children, I've done that over the past 30 years. But always with the thought in mind that if it comes down to go into your ball game, or your mom needs me at something, I'm going to go to what your mom needs. Not because I don't want you to play a game, because I do. I want to give that validation. I want to, let them know that I care for them and I love them. But if there's a conflict between them and mom wins. Yeah. Every single time, mom always wins. And it's not, again, because I don't love them. I do. But I was displaying to them the fact that I love mom even more. Right. And they learned that. And over the years, they respected that. As a matter of fact, they got to the point as they got older, hey, Dad, we'd like for you to do blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Are you going to do anything with mom? Is that, or we're going to be okay? So, yeah, let's make that happen. Let's put it on the schedule. And so they actually began to prioritize their time around our time, not vice versa. Right. Too many marriages and set the priority around their children to the point that you can't even live as a spouse together because you're so busy chasing after your kids and their games or functions, the plays, the rehearsals, the dance thing, the skate thing, the baseball, the football, the basketball, the chess club, whatever it is. I'm not trying to. I'm a sports guy, so I kind of lean towards the sports thing. But whatever the activity may be, even church activities can get in the way of the priority of what you're doing. So even though we say go to church, doesn't mean that you become all consumed with everything that the church does, because you still have to have her as a priority.
Right.
So that's just huge. So I let them know.
Another example that I'm thinking of, as we raised our kids, I think he mentioned in another course actually about the girls would maybe want to go shopping, or they'd need some cash flow for something they wanted to do with a group of friends or whatever, and so they'd come to him and he would tell them, well, I have this much money, and I've promised your mom this much, so I'm going to give this to your mom. Now he knew full well that I might say, okay, what I want to do with this money is give it to the kids so they can do whatever, but he always told them that I was the priority first, and so he was going to give that to me. And then he trusted me to divide it however it needed to be divided. We weren't withholding from them necessarily, but he was enforcing the fact that I was the first priority. And then if he had anything left over, he could give that to them. Or he'd allow me to make the decision if I wanted to give it to them.
Sure.
So that was another way that we prioritized spouses first and then children.
Yeah, because early on my kids learned, I already gave mom the money. But the thing is, you can go sweet talk mom, and she'll probably give most of that back to you, and it'll be okay. Possibly. Definitely. Yeah. and that was fine. Yeah. And I was okay with that. But in doing that, they still understood that Leslie was the number one priority. And they're like, oh, and it wasn't neglecting them at all. Because it got funneled down it's kind of like funneling down the right chain. And we did that the right way with that. So it's just important to remember to do that. Go ahead.
I think another thing that you need to think about as you're prioritizing is he mentioned the calendar, and how as the kids got older, we taught everyone to look at the calendar and put their activities down that they had going on. But we also we had 5 children at home at one time. We still have 5 children, but we had 5 of them at home at one time. And so for us, each child got to choose one activity that they wanted to be involved in for that season or for that year or whatever. And we didn't allow them to have like 5 activities, because we had 5 children. If they all had 5 activities, we would be running around like crazy people. We would never have been able to get anything enjoyment out of it at all, or be able to get to all those things. So they had one activity. They chose carefully. They learned to prioritize what they liked and what they wanted to try out or do. And so as they learned about prioritizing from us, we could keep a calendar that was laid out well, and we weren't killing ourselves trying to get to everything. And they weren't worn out from trying to get to multiple activities, that they just couldn't stretch that thin. But it was priority that we always put church first. The kids knew that if it's a church night, if it's a Sunday morning, they're not going to do something else because we have church at that time. So that was God first. They put that in first, and then they would choose their other activities. I know that at least one of our kids was not able to participate in a sport because they had chosen Wednesday night to be the night that they always had rehearsal, or they always had practice. And so that didn't work for us, because we always had youth and children's activities on Wednesday night at church. And so they knew that church came first, and they had to learn that that was the priority, and they found a different thing to participate in on a different night. So.
Were they disappointed? Yes, they were, but they understood really early on that that's a priority. And we're getting away from the spouse second thing, that we'll get more into children, but it's okay. I want to bring this reel back in, because we kind of rabbit trail on you. And normally that's me.
Sorry.
Yay!
It's all a casserole to me, so it's all together.
Yeah, and that's how I started this unit, so we're good. But the third point we want to bring to, because you don't take their activities of your children and idolize them. You want to get so involved in that you forget this and forget family. You also need to let your children know that your spouse is top priority. And one of the ways you can do that and I did this often, and we did this often, especially early on in our marriage, when the kids were little, especially. I youth pastor, and then I worked full time, so I was gone a lot because I was working constantly, and I would come home, and the kids like, "Dad's home, let's play," and I love that. I mean, they attack, come running, and they want to play, and I would hug them, love them, and I always tell them, say, "Give me a little time. Your mom and I are going to reconnect." And they had no idea what that meant. They're too little to understand that.
No.
But they knew. They went in this other room. They had games,
toys,
maybe some movies. They went and played for about 5 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
While Leslie and I went to the kitchen, the bedroom, wherever we could find a place that wasn't as noisy as the children were, and sat down and reconnected. She told me about her day. I would listen, tell her about my day. And we would have that conversation, and we would reconnect. We would prioritize our relationship,
right.
And our children saw that. And then as soon as we were done reconnecting, and putting our schedules back together and our lives back together as husband and wife, then we went back in and we engaged with the kids and reconnected with them. I reconnected with them immediately, and then set them aside, reconnected with Leslie. Then went back in and we started playing, having fun. It might be dinner time or after dinner. They may be eating, I eat my dinner, then reconnect with them. I gave them the time and the value, but they always knew that mom came first.
Right.
And it just became part of our practice. So they knew hug and love, little play, little kiss on the cheek, little hug. We're going to go play now. Mom and dad are going over here. And talk, or whatever it is that they do in the kitchen. And then we reconnect. And then take, like I said, maybe 15 minutes tops. But then after we reconnect, then we would go right back into being full family at that point.
And that was good for the kids to see that I was priority and he was priority. That was good for them to see that. It's also good for each one of us because we knew that we were saying, okay, I missed you today. I need you, and I need to hear where you were at and what happened with you. And it got us back on the same page with one another. And it was a really good practice to make sure that we were we're just in the same level plane. We needed to be together. And that actually still happens, not in that same detailed way where we made it very clear this is what we were doing, but now when Brian comes home, we still have, I put my stuff down, I look at him, he looks at me, we have FaceTime, we are talking about, okay, what happened today, where have you been, what's been going on with you. If he's out of the house, then we have to have that time to reconnect. It doesn't always take 15 minutes, it maybe just takes 5, but you just need that time to get on the same page with each other and be aligned with one another.
And I will say this about reconnecting: you can stay connected throughout the day. You're actually more fortunate than we were when we got married 30 plus years ago. We didn't have smartphones. We was landlines still. We didn't have cell phones at that point. The ones that they had were the big bag ones that looked like you worked for the CIA. That's the ones that they had, but we didn't do any of that. So
there was no texting.
There was no texting. There was no Facebook message. There was no FaceTime. There was no Skype. There was no WhatsApp.
There was nothing.
None of that. And so we didn't do that. So we made it a priority because now I'll literally during the day, if I'm gone doing stuff long enough, I'll send her a text just let her know I'm thinking about her. So I can feed that reconnect throughout the day.
Yes.
As just a little bonus to what we're talking about here. You can use technology to your benefit. A lot of it distracts from family, but you can also use it to your benefit. And so I'll send her little text notes. I'll how much I love her, and I'll flirt with her on the phone because that's kind of fun. Nothing too risque because
children might pick it up. Be careful.
But never done that. That's why I'm careful. Otherwise, I'd be even more flirtatious. But you do those kinds of things and take the time to reconnect throughout the day with the technology that you have, but don't neglect once you get back together to make the reconnection. So anyway, spouse second, God first. We hope that this particular unit, in spite of our rabbit trailing, they got you some stuff that is valuable to you that you can use. And as always, we'll have more resources and additional things at the bottom of the unit, at the bottom of the course, for you to jump in and look at and read and listen to, all those kinds of things. So glad that you're here. Glad you're part of Family Secrets. And we really, really, really are hoping that you get great value from this, and that you're
Yes.
taking things from our experience and our education
Mm-hmm.
and our expertise in marriage and family and applying it to your family so that
Right.
your family can stay unbreakable. All
Yes.
right? Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.